The following is a presentation of the ACC Network, an exclusive production of Pregame Sports.
It's a beautiful day in Pittsburgh. The Virginia Cavaliers heading to face the Pitt Panthers. The two teams have split in their first two meetings as members of the ACC. The Hoos, though, they've never won at Heinz Field. Can they do it today on homecoming? All the action starts right now on the ACC Blitz, powered by Ram Trucks. Well, welcome inside the ACC Blitz, powered by Ram Trucks. It's hard to believe we are halfway through the regular season. Here to help us break it down, the always knowledgeable former Clemson head coach Tommy Bowden. And this week we are lucky to be joined by former Virginia linebacker Stan Norfleet. Stan, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having us. Feel good to be home, Coach. Good to be on this side and not on that side. You got after our bunch a little bit.
Yeah, you gave me nightmares.
Oh, no. The arguing has begun. It's going to be a good one today. Week 6 in the ACC brings us two longtime rivals squaring off against one another. Georgia Tech heads down to Clemson. Later tonight, Miami is at Florida State. We're going to talk more in depth on that in a minute. But Stan, the Blue Devils head to West Point. How will Duke's defense handle that triple option?
Katie, I think they'll do just fine. They've seen this before. Just 2 weeks ago, they played Georgia Tech, who runs a very similar system. They were able to come out of that game victorious as well. Led by All-American Jeremy Cash in the secondary. This group flies around. Coach Cut has them very disciplined, very focused. At the end of the day, better players, better coaching. Duke should not struggle against this bunch. Blue Devils, #2 scoring defense in the ACC.
All right, and Coach, Syracuse, they head to South Florida. What are you expecting out of that one?
Syracuse sitting there at 3-1. Expect them to start freshman quarterback Eric Dungey, who is back after being out with a head injury. Before Dungey was hurt, he was 21 of 36, 428 yards, 5 touchdowns, and what all coaches like, 0 turnovers.
Well, most teams have already played at least one game in the conference. This is the time when we start looking big picture. Last night, Virginia Tech with a big win over NC State. But as we take a look at where things stand, it's wide open in the Coastal, in the Atlantic. Two very familiar teams matching up at the top, Florida State, Clemson. I feel like we say this all the time, but Coach, as you look at how things are laid out right now, that big game, Florida State taking on Clemson, is November 7th. Before we get there, though, they've got to get through the rest of this month. What's an opponent that's going to be the toughest for both of those teams?
Yeah, when you look at Clemson's schedule, I don't think you can look at the one past the one they play this afternoon, Georgia Tech, and it's where they play them. After the Notre Dame game, I don't think there's any way Clemson can match the enthusiasm, the energy that they had when they played Notre Dame. Plus the fact that Georgia Tech has lost 2 conference games, their backs against the wall. I feel they'll have a better sense of urgency and focus because of where they stand. And when you look over at the Florida State, their remaining games, again, I drop down to Georgia Tech, simply because it's the style of defense that Clemson and Florida State play. Aggressive, very talented. They penetrate. On defense, you like to say sick 'em instead of whoa. But when you play offensive option teams, you say, who's got the dive? Who's got the quarterback? Pitch. Whoa, I got to make my mind up. So, Stan, I think those two teams are a problem. I know you're not going to disagree with me.
Always animated over here.
Coach, you get me excited when you start saying sick 'em. I've heard that before. But I am going to respectfully disagree. You know I love you and the family. But I actually think coming into the day, it's not this game. It's actually the week before the November 7th matchup. At NC State, when you talk about Jacoby Brissett and Matthew Days, they both, even with the loss last night, are still playing as well as anybody in the conference offensively. The defense is talented, and they will get after you. And we all know in this conference, every year at Carter-Finley Stadium, they get somebody. I think it could be Clemson with their eye on that game against Clemson. Happened to Miami last week at BC.
Plus, I think it's a Thursday night game on national TV. Maybe Halloween, too.
All right, what about Florida State?
Florida State, for me, it's actually today. These two teams know each other. The kids come from the same area. A lot of them went to the same high school. When you talk about Dalvin Cook's injury, if he can't go, he's the one, what we call X player. He's the one guy that's explosive enough to change the game. If he can't go or is limited in any capacity, it's neutralized, and Brad Collier and that offense is potent. Florida State better be careful.
All right, he's already started talking about the game coming up tonight. Kickoff 8 p.m. in Tallahassee. But, Coach, he mentioned Dalvin Cook. He got banged up last week against Wake Forest with a hamstring. What happens if he doesn't go tonight? Florida
State has got to find some way to replace about 140 yards of total offense. What are the best ways to do that? Number one, I think using Kermit Whitfield, their wide receiver, who is their fastest wide receiver. If you take Kermit and use him on speed sweeps, on using reverses, on bubble screens outside, on tunnel screens inside, I think you can utilize his speed and quickness more than they have. And then I also think that Everett Golson in some running plays, all of a sudden you take the offensive scheme, you take the tailback out, they take a defender out, use the same blocking schemes, and you use Everett Golson as a runner. I think, Stan, those are the two best ways to count for that 140 yards.
I like where your head is at, Coach. Golson is not running the ball right now at Florida State the same way he did in 2012 when he was with Notre Dame. I'm wondering if Jimbo is kind of hiding that from America and is going to bring it out when he needs to. Today may be one of those days. Organized draws, getting the ball on the perimeter, not with pitch plays, but with tosses to the edge so they can get to the numbers and get the sideline. We know FSU has athletes. Get the ball in the hands of your playmakers and let them go north and south and get out the gate right now.
It would be really nice, though, if they had Dalvin Cook on the field. He leads the ACC in rushing last week, a 94-yard touchdown run against Wake Forest.
Ex-player.
Okay, so they're facing a Miami team, and on paper right now, when you look at both sides of the ball, offensively, they're doing okay. Defensively, though, they're not getting the job done. Stan, you played for Al Golden. He was your defensive coordinator, so you know his defense. What is going on with Miami's defense?
Well, I think there are a couple things people need to know about Miami. It's not our brothers. I have an older brother. It's not our brothers' you. It's a different you. These kids out here don't remember the litany of #1 draft picks on the defensive end that came out of that institution. Granted, Denzel Perryman was a second-round draft pick last year. If you look at the last 4 years and accumulate that into a formula, Miami's only averaging the 14th best recruiting class in the country. A little bit of misnomer. People believe they're getting better talent than they're really getting. The other part to that is a lot of time we believe coaches shouldn't have to coach effort. I beg to differ. The 18 and 19-year-olds, Coach, you can speak to it. You still got to motivate that bunch to fly around and get after the ball. Also, because they're 18 and 19, are they hearing some of the things circulating and looking at social media, looking at what's happening on the web and those types of things, reading the papers, talking to friends and family? All of those things can be distractions. Put the button on it. Miami in the red zone have allowed 11 scores in 12 trips, second to worst in the ACC. Got to play better in the red zone, Coach.
Well, we look at those defensive numbers, they aren't very good. But one of the reasons might be is because they're tired and they're fatigued. And you go flip over to the offensive numbers. They look pretty impressive until you dig a little bit deeper. Third down conversions, they're 126 in the nation at 24%. As an ex-play caller and offensive coordinator, I used to shoot for 35 to 40%. They are way far away from that. If they can convert on third downs, keep their defense off the field. But they've got Waters, they've got Scott, they've got Kaya, they've got Joseph Yearby. Too many weapons and too much inventory for them to not be more productive on third down. They really need to research, Katie, what they're calling on third down.
Well, last time Miami beat Florida State was back in 2009, but recent history has Florida State winning 8 times in their last 10 meetings. Well, our game at the bottom of the hour, we're going to see that guy, Tyler Boyd, averaging 10.5 receiving yards, second on the team with all-purpose yards. Stick around. We've got more on the ACC Blitz next. The ACC Blitz is powered by Ram Trucks.
2 playoff contenders, Notre Dame versus Clemson.
Watson wants to carry it, breaks a tackle at the 10, the 5, touchdown! Deshaun Watson.
Kaiser loops it for the end zone. Touchdown! The Irish are a 2-point conversion away from overtime.
Takes the shotgun snap. Kaiser trying to get to the end zone. Gonna be stopped! Gonna be stopped!
Hey, it was BYOG, bring your own guts. And they brought some guts and some heart, and they never quit till the last play.
BYOG. OMG, we are bringing the guts. No, I'm bringing the guts here on the ACC Blitz. Clemson with a big 24-22 win over Notre Dame. Coach, I know you've said this so many times. Big players show up in big games, and we saw that from that sophomore quarterback, Deshaun Watson.
You know, I thought Clemson would win, but I thought they would win on the arm of Deshaun Watson and not the legs. Going into the game, Deshaun Watson, or in the Notre Dame game, was 10 for 21 at 47%. He hasn't thrown for 47% since he was 9 years old. But all of a sudden, he discovered his legs. 16 rushes, 93 yards, 5.8 yards per carry. So offensively, they're not nearly as productive as they were last year. Right now, they're 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th in the conference in rushing offense, passing offense, scoring offense, and total offense. So not as dominant on offense, and Stanley, they're not as dominant on defense like they were last year.
Yeah, I want to start with Watson's legs first. Really wanted to see when he got against a high level of competition, how would the confidence be with that knee? Having gone through an ACL reconstruction myself, he absolutely unleashed the beast. He was moving with some swagger and some confidence that Clemson's going to need to have for them to get to where they're trying to get to ultimately in the college football playoff. It's one thing to do it against App State and Wofford, but when you got the number 6 team in the country coming into your place with a bunch of NFL draft picks over there on defense, happy to see. Over on the defensive side, not as deep as they were a year ago. Vic Beasley and those guys are going on to play on Sundays. Fatigue is going to be an issue. I'm going to be watching moving forward. How will attrition affect this group? They got wore down, and Notre Dame, had they had more time, might have come back and won that ball game.
Well, that Clemson defense going to be tested again. They face a Georgia Tech offense that brings in a different look than they're accustomed to seeing week in and week out. Yeah, the Yellow Jackets have lost 3 straight, but as you take a look at these numbers, guys, the last couple of games, Stan, they're not running the ball well.
Yeah. What I think is happening is they're replacing the A and B back in that triple option offense that they run. They've also got to replace those receivers. Justin Thomas understands, I've got to do everything. The problem is he's doing too much. It's one thing to be a leader. It's another thing to be a hoarder. Relax, Jay Thomas. This is what you do. Run this offense, trust the system, rely on your training coach, and everything will be okay. Thomas has also got to quit turning the ball over. 5 turnovers in the last 3 ball games cannot happen.
You know, Stanley, as a head coach, always wanted to run the ball to be balanced. Georgia Tech doesn't want balance. They don't want to run it. They have to run it. For them to be successful, not only offensively, but their team, they've got to run it for over 300 yards a game. 2013, they rushed for right at 300 yards a game, very average. 2014, jumped up to 342 yards a game and won a lot of football games. When you saw the graphic, the 3 games they lost, all under 200 yards rushing.
Well, Georgia Tech trying to avoid their first 4-game losing streak since 1996. And guys, they've got to do it now because the schedule does not get any easier. Today's Clemson. Then in 2 weeks, it's Florida State. Then next weekend, it's Pitt. We are going to see a very good Pitt defense at the bottom of the hour. They're going up against a Virginia team in desperate need of a win. They're looking to make it their first conference game, but to do it, they're going to have to slow down a running back from Pitt that has impressed me and him, I know, in Quadre Olison.
Quadre Olison has emerged as a youth movement. Coach Narduzzi decided, hey, I don't have my boy Connor. James, the Terminator Connor, is no longer with us. So where do I go? I'm going to go to Niagara Falls, New York, and I'm going to plug in a redshirt freshman that's got some ability, second in the ACC in rushing yards and average per game behind Dalvin Cook, has 3 touchdowns. But I think it's important to understand, Coach, you may not have the name, but you've got the production. Quadre Olison is averaging 1+ more yards per carry than Connor did just a year ago. One of those sneaky stats that I like to get in there. I know you've seen that, though.
Well, you mentioned Pat Narduzzi, the head coach of Pitt. He's from Michigan State. Michigan State's background history is tailback you. Run it downhill between the tackles, big physical back, 35, 40 times a game. With Quadre Olison, they like doing that.
One of the things that makes it important, and this is why Narduzzi had to go find another monster, another Terminator, if you will, balance. You talked about it earlier with Georgia Tech. Pitt is the same way. For Boyd to get off the way that he needs to, you got to keep the defenses at bay. Pounding that rock, controlling that line of scrimmage is an absolute must. He's got one in Olison.
Well, one of the questions that we've been asking through the first 5 weeks of the season is who will be under center for the Pitt Panthers. It looks like there's no longer quarterback controversy in Pittsburgh. For more on that, let's check in with our very own Roddy Jones.
Thanks, Katie. Pittsburgh fans didn't know a lot about quarterback Nate Peterman coming into the year, but after splitting time with last year's starter Chad Voidick over the first 4 games, head coach Pat Narduzzi has said Peterman is the man under center going forward. After graduating from Tennessee last year and deciding to make the move north to Pittsburgh, Narduzzi pointed at the Iowa game and his proficiency running the offense and moving them down the field consistently as the reason that Peterman will be the guy under center going forward. To counter that, Virginia will look to get the ball in their hands of the big playmaker, Taquan Mizell. They call him Smoke, and they'll move him around all over the field. Now, offensive coordinator Steve Fairchild says they use over 115 different formations, so expect to see Smoke Mizell all over the place. Now, that's it from here in Pittsburgh. We got a beautiful sunny day. Let's go back to the studio with Katie.
Thanks, Roddy. Well, for Virginia, Coach, the way Mike London is handling this, coming off a bye week, he says this is a brand new season. This is the beginning of a new season. Is that the right approach?
It's not only the right approach, it's his only approach right now. They have no conference losses in the Coastal Division. They've got as good a chance right now as anybody to win it. And he's got to convince his team of that. He says, hey, if we'll go out and play like we did versus Notre Dame, a very talented top 10 team, we can beat anybody in this division. We have 0 losses. Now, in order to do that, Stanley, they're going to have to play pretty good on defense.
Yeah, and I think essentially there's a philosophical approach to this thing. Most people say Boyd is killing the conference, dominating. I'm saying take away Olesen. He's been absolutely the engine that has made this thing go. Focus, stop Olesen, make them be one-dimensional. People would ask, well, why would you want them to do that? Anytime a quarterback drops back or a team has to pass, interception, sacks, strip fumbles, incomplete pass stops the clock, which gives the defense a chance to take a breath. And last but not least, how many young quarterbacks in this level can matriculate their way down the field, Katie and Coach? They can't do it on a regular basis. Make them pass. That's your only way to get in the game.
Mike London, 5-2, coming off a bye week, looking to make it 6. The ACC and your local Toyota dealers are giving you access to some of the best football games in ACC history. Catch memorable moments, game-winning plays, relive over 60 classic games, all for free. Visit theacc.com/vault, brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places. Well, quarterback Matt Johns looking to get back on track against a very tough Pitt Panthers defense. Stick around, we've got more after a word from your local stations. Welcome back to the ACC Blitz, powered by Ram Trucks. I'm Katie Witham, alongside the coach who never had a losing season. He's Tommy Bowden, the former Virginia linebacker and Washington Redskins scout Stan Norfleet. And guys, we had a big game last night. It was very wet in Lane Stadium. In fact, it was a little bit of a delay at first. NC State, though, got off to a quick start. Then things would not go well after that. The story of the night, this guy, Isaiah Ford, comes up with a 27-yard touchdown catch. Coach, that was his first of 3, and it looked like him and Brendan Motley really had some chemistry.
That's what you like to see of a quarterback. Can he bounce back after adversity? Last week in the loss versus Pitt, 3 interceptions. Came back this week, started out slow, but as you watch the game go on further and further, he felt more comfortable. 3 touchdown passes to Isaiah Ford, but again, great pinpoint accuracy in the red zone. That gets a lot of inexperienced quarterbacks in trouble with that throw, but a great job by Brendan Motley, and Stan, he had some help.
He did, and he finds it here. Stan, Trey McMillan, a big run.
Huge run. This is the result of 3 quarters worth of body blows, and you finally get the TKO in the 4th quarter. Prior to that 59-yard run, Trey only had 10 carries for 27 yards, obviously a 2.7 per carry average. You got to continue to chip away at the body, and ultimately you can pop one. The other part to this on the other sideline, this Jacoby Brissett kid, 12 of 25, 113 yards, threw 4 tud, unfortunately had an interception. But early on, I love the way they were able to do some different things with him, run some zone read. We aren't used to seeing him get on the perimeter and do some of those special things with his legs. Not the athlete that we've seen do that in the past, but he kind of reminded me of Jameis Winston a little bit. Size, stature, ability to deliver the ball, but Jameis was sneaky enough to wiggle for a first down if you gave it to him. I saw the same thing in Brissett. Mel Kiper says Brissett is the number 4 quarterback prospect coming out right now as a senior.
Very similar talents.
Well, and the one thing, though, that we did see from Jacoby Brissett, his first interception in 242 passes. The one thing, though, that you didn't talk about, and I'm making you right now, Matt Days, I know you're a big fan. What did you think of him?
I tell you, it started out well in the first quarter, but NC State could do whatever they wanted. They had 140 total yards in the first quarter. All of a sudden, the guru, Bud Foster, defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech, he cracked the code of the NC State offense, held them to 130 total yards for the remaining three quarters. So Matt Days, Jacoby Brissett, they met Bud Foster, and a little bit difficulty for them, Stan.
No doubt. Bud Foster does a terrific job. He always has, having gone up against him a number of times myself. Coaching is not about what you do in ideal circumstances. It's what you do when it's not perfect, along with adjustments you make it to have.
We've got an interesting coaching matchup in our game. Sixth season for Mike London, first for Pat Narduzzi. Stick around. We've got more ACC Blitz coming up next. Today's show has been powered by Ram Trucks. Welcome back in. I'm Katie Witham. He's Stan Norfleet and Tommy Bowden. We've got a great game. It's homecoming at Heinz Field, and this Pitt defense has been very tough, Stan.
No doubt. This has been the trademark of what Narduzzi wanted to do coming from Michigan State. The defense, what did I see here? Ranked second in sacks nationally, fourth in rushing defense, fourth in total defense. They've had 19 sacks all of the 2014 season, 17 thus far already. I think this is what the key is going to be. Make Matt Johns uncomfortable. We saw what he can do in throwing you the interceptions. It's the key to victory.
One of Virginia's bright spots has been Matt Johns. They need to protect him, get the ball to Kanan Severn. 11 catches versus Notre Dame, 153 yards. That's Virginia's best chance.
Kanan Severn leads Virginia with 23 catches, the team high. We've got a good one in Pittsburgh. Our guys are already on the ground. Tim Brandt, Dave Archer, Roddy Jones have the call. Guys, take it away.
Thanks, Katie.
Coach, good luck in the second half. Pittsburgh's almost doubled Virginia in total yards, but only up 7 points going into halftime. Let's go back to the studio with Katie.
Thanks, Roddy. Well, you heard Pitt's head coach say more explosive gains. I know these guys wouldn't mind seeing some of that, but Coach, early initial thoughts after seeing Pitt.
I tell you, I'm really impressed with. We talk a lot about Pitt's defense, but the play-action pass of Pitt discombobulates the linebackers, gets the tight ends open. Pitt tight ends, 4 catches for 100 yards. Look for more of that in the second half.
Discombobulate is the right word. I'm discombobulated over here trying to understand what's going on with the Cavaliers. I don't see a focused football team. With this being a chance to rewrite your season, starting conference play, I'm seeing miscues all over the place. In the kicking game, in the red area, you can't get lined up properly, drop balls. Mike London at halftime has got to address this team and get them to settle down. They got let off the hook by getting a fumble recovery for a touchdown, but the game, a lot more going on wrong than right for the team in white.
Well, we're going to dive deeper in depth into this game, but we also have some other games going around, highlights from around the ACC coming up next on the Hyundai Halftime Report. Stick around. Welcome back inside the Hyundai Halftime Report. I'm Katie Witham alongside the former Clemson head coach Tommy Bowden and the former Virginia linebacker Stan Norfleet. We have had a good game, one that we can't take our eyes off of up in West Point, New York. It's Duke all over Army. And guys, we got to get straight to the highlights because we've seen some action. And it started early with some defense. DeAndre Singleton coming up with a fumble.
Love doing the edge pressure. We talked about Duke has seen that triple option earlier in the season from Georgia Tech, gives them confidence to play fast, creates a turnover right there.
And it leads to this. Thomas Sirk finds Eric Snyder. That's a 10-yard touchdown catch. That puts Duke up 10-0. Then, second quarter, second-string quarterback Parker Bame into the game, throwing things off, but then, Coach, it's all Jalay Duncan.
Oh, the big man. They don't ever get the ball. All they do is block. You give him the ball, he gets in the end zone. Give it to me more.
And we like seeing that even more when he gets into the end zone. 27-0. We just spoke in the last segment about how good Duke's defense has been. Specifically, though, Coach, what's impressed you?
Well, you know, option teams have a difficult time throwing the football. It's never a high percentage, but 0 yards passing in the first half, that's big.
Well, we've had a really good game in Pittsburgh, taking on Virginia. Quadre Olison, the true freshman. Stick around. We've got more after this. Welcome back to the Hyundai Halftime Report. Tommy Bowden, Katie Witham, Stan Norfleet here. We had a big game last night in Lane Stadium, Virginia Tech and NC State. And this one started off slow because there was a weather delay. Lightning just slowed things down a little bit. NC State, though, they got off to a quick start, but then it did not go well. The story was this guy, Isaiah Ford, a 27-yard touchdown catch. Coach, his first of 3 with Brendan Motley.
Well, he wouldn't have had any of those catches without that quarterback, Brendan Motley. Motley last week versus Pitt, 3 interceptions. He came out this week, 3 touchdown passes. I really thought he improved. When you watch Brendan Motley throughout this game, he continually got better and better. You could see his comfort and confidence continue to rise here, really in the end zone, just pocket laser pass right there. But again, great job by Brendan Motley. But Stan, he had some help.
Look at those big nasties pulling around that left edge. A seal here and a seal here, and then you just see athletic ability up the sideline. Home run ball. Hey, mama, get my name in the paper for a touchdown. 59 yards to the house, sealed it for the Hokies.
That name in the paper, Trayvon McMillan, a 59-yard touchdown run. That one really sealed the deal. But guys, this game, 28-13, the final. Stan, I got to go to you. What was your biggest takeaway from this game?
The biggest takeaway, I think, is that Motley and Ford in that second quarter, they put it away, 21 points, unanswered, ball game.
All right, Coach, you've got to talk about Jacoby Brissett. We've talked about him and how good he's been, but this wasn't necessarily his best game.
Well, Bud Foster, defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech, corrected the Jacoby Brissett. He cracked the code of Jacoby Brissett. North Carolina State opened up like a house on fire. 140 total yards the first quarter. The next 3 quarters, only 130 total yards. Jacoby Brissett, I looked at it more as the coach's play selection than blame it on Jacoby Brissett. But Bud Foster, a great job defensively for Virginia Tech.
What is it that you just said? The tape never lies, right? So what you see.
What you see is what you coached, is what happens.
There you go.
That's right. Jacoby Brissett with his first interception in 242 attempts. Virginia defense coming up big. Their first forced turnover of the year. We've got more after a word from your local stations. Geico presents the best of the ACC. Pitt's Tyler Boyd leads the ACC in receptions and receiving yards per game with 91 yards receiving per contest. Boyd leads his closest competition by 15 yards per game. Today, guys, Tyler Boyd 4 catches for 37 yards. Well, Virginia's Micah Kaiser leads the ACC in both tackles and sacks per game. Kaiser has 2 games of double-digit tackles already, and he has posted a season-high 15 tackles in the Wahoo's 3rd game against William & Mary. And that is our Geico Best of the ACC. Well, this one has been a good game in Pittsburgh. It's homecoming there. And guys, I know you want to see how we got to halftime with Pitt on top. As we take a look at how we got there, it all started with the Pitt Panthers early in the first quarter. Scott Orndorff, a 37-yard touchdown catch. That puts Pitt up 7-0, and then the guy you like, Quadre Olison, Coach.
Well, 230 pounds, gets his pads level and his head pointed north and south, gets it in the end zone.
But Virginia had some opportunities, Stan, and this was a huge one.
This could have completely swung momentum with enough time to continue to stay competitive. We need T.J. Thorpe to step up and be a compliment to Kane and Severin if they're going to hang in this thing.
You talk about stepping up right there.
Rumble, big man, rumble. We'll take it how we can get it when you're talking about the Virginia Cavaliers. Good for them. They're still in the ball game, even though there have been some blown coverages and some missed opportunities.
They are still in the ball game, guys. One last thought about this game. What would it be, Coach?
Feed Quadre Olison the ball. 7 rushes for 23 yards. He's averaging 106 yards a game. He needs more at-bats. You give him at-bats, he's eventually going to hit a home run.
Team in white, I'm going to need you to settle down. You've got an all-ACC player back there in the secondary. Communicate up front. Between Micah and Quinn Blandon, they should be playing much better on defense. I looked at them to make that adjustment.
Talking like an alumni here. Settle down, guys. I hope they can hear you. Thanks for watching the Hyundai Halftime Report. When we come back, it will be 3rd quarter action with Tim Brandt, Dave Archer, and Roddy Jones. Thanks again for watching.